Lena Weston had always believed that the key to happiness was simplicity. A quiet life, a small house nestled on the edge of the town, and the calm rhythm of routine. For years, she had settled into this comfort, never questioning the past, never seeking the truths that had been buried long ago. But all of that changed the day the letter arrived. It came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, in a plain, white envelope with her name written in elegant, looping handwriting. No return address, no stamp, just a name she hadn't heard in years, Eliza Weston. Her heart skipped a beat. Eliza. Her older sister had disappeared without a trace when Lena was still a child. The memory of her sister's departure was a blur, like a dream half forgotten. Lena had spent her childhood asking questions no one would answer, and as she grew older, the questions faded. Life moved on, but this letter, now in her hands, resurrected everything. She sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. The words that followed sent a chill down her spine. Lena, I know you must be wondering why I left. And I know I've hurt you by staying away for so long. But the truth is darker than you could ever imagine. Our family isn't what you think it is. I've left clues for you. Please find them before it's too late, Eliza. The letter was cryptic, but the sense of urgency was undeniable. Lena's mind raced. What did Eliza mean? What was she trying to say? She stood up, pacing the kitchen, trying to calm her breathing. She had to know. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. The words from the letter echoed in her mind, gnawing at her. She had lived her whole life in a small town where nothing ever changed, and yet she felt the stirrings of something dark on the horizon. Something that had always been there, hidden in the shadows. The following morning, she decided to follow Eliza's cryptic instructions. The letter had mentioned clues that could lead her to the truth. The first clue was hidden in a place she knew well, the attic of their childhood home, a place Lena hadn't ventured since Eliza's disappearance. The house was silent when Lena arrived, the door creaking as she stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the once vibrant walls were now faded and peeling. She made her way up the narrow staircase, her heart pounding in her chest. When she reached the attic, she hesitated, her fingers trembling on the handle of the door. The attic was a place of forgotten memories, old boxes, broken furniture, and half-moon beams of light that flickered through the grime-covered windows. Lena stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a dusty wooden chest in the far corner. Without thinking, she moved toward it, brushing aside cobwebs as she knelt to open it. Inside, there were old photo albums and pieces of forgotten history. But there, at the bottom of the chest, was a small, leather-bound journal. Her hands shook as she opened it. The first page was filled with Eliza's familiar handwriting. Lena, you've always been the curious one, the one who asked the hard questions. I know you'll find this journal, and when you do, you'll understand why I had to leave. The truth about our family is buried in these pages. But be careful, some truths are more dangerous than others. The words struck Lena like a blow to the chest. She flipped through the pages, desperate to find more. And then, on the last page, she found something that stopped her heart: an address, written in Eliza's hurried scrawl. Find the house at 46 Mill Street. Everything begins there. Mill Street was only a few miles from her childhood home, but as Lena drove there the next day, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The street was lined with old, decaying houses, but one stood out. Number 46 was different. It looked almost brand new, though the rest of the street was in disrepair. She parked her car in front of the house, her stomach twisting in knots. The house looked abandoned, its windows dark and empty. But Lena could feel something in the air, a sense of foreboding that she couldn't ignore. Taking a deep breath, she approached the door. To her surprise, it opened easily, as though someone had been expecting her. She stepped inside, the air stale and thick with dust. The floorboards creaked under her feet, and the house seemed to groan in protest as she ventured deeper into its heart. In the living room, there was a strange sight: an old rocking chair, gently swaying as if someone had just been sitting in it. But no one was there. Lena's eyes scanned the room, stopping on a small wooden box on the coffee table. The box was intricately carved, its surface covered in delicate patterns. Without thinking, Lena reached out and lifted the lid. Inside, there was a faded photograph of Eliza, a young girl standing next to a woman Lena didn't recognize. They were smiling, but there was something eerie about the photo, something that sent a shiver down Lena's spine. At the bottom of the box, beneath the photo, was a letter. "Lena, if you're reading this, you're too late." Her heart raced as she read on. "The woman in the photograph is our mother. The truth about what happened to Eliza lies with her. I can't tell you everything now, but I've left one final clue. It's buried under the old oak tree in the backyard. Find it before they find you." Lena's mind was reeling as she made her way to the backyard. She could feel the weight of the secrets pressing in on her, suffocating her. The oak tree loomed ahead, its branches twisting into the sky like skeletal fingers. She knelt, her hands trembling as she dug into the dirt, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Finally, her fingers brushed against something cold metal. She pulled it out, a small, rusted key. There was no note attached, but she knew it was the key to something important. Later that night, Lena sat in her dimly lit living room, staring at the key in her hand. She couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that she was being watched. Her phone rang suddenly, breaking the silence. It was an unknown number. "Hello." Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "Lena," a man's voice said, low and gravelly. "I know what you're looking for. And if you want to find the truth about your family, you're going to have to trust me." Her heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" "You don't need to know yet," the man replied. "But if you want to find Eliza and understand everything, you'll have to come to the old asylum. You have the key, The rest will unfold when you're there." The line went dead. The old asylum had been abandoned for years, a crumbling relic of a forgotten era. Lena's mind raced as she stood in front of its iron gates, the key clutched tightly in her hand. The asylum had once been a place of horror, a place where patients were forgotten, where the past was buried beneath the weight of time. She walked through the gates, each step echoing in the night. The asylum loomed ahead, its windows dark and empty, its walls covered in ivy. She felt a chill run down her spine as she approached the main door. The key fit perfectly. Inside, the asylum was a maze of cold, empty halls. The air smelt of mildew and decay, and the silence was oppressive. Lena's footsteps echoed as she moved deeper into the building, each room more unsettling than the last. Finally, she came to a door marked Restricted Area. She inserted the key into the lock, her hands trembling. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room, its only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. In the center of the room stood a large, rusted table, and on the table, a stack of files. Lena approached the table, her heart pounding in her chest. She flipped through the files, each one more disturbing than the last. The final file, however, made her blood run cold. It was her family's file. As she read, the truth became clear. Eliza hadn't just disappeared. She had been part of a twisted experiment, one that her parents had known about. The asylum was not just a place for the mentally ill, it was a place for the unwanted. And her family, too, had been caught in its grip. Lena felt her knees give way as she collapsed onto the floor. Her mind was unraveling as the truth came crashing down on her. Her parents were part of something far darker than she could ever imagine. They had sacrificed Eliza for some twisted research, something that haunted their entire family. A sudden, sharp noise broke her thoughts. The door behind her slammed shut. A voice called out, "Lena, we didn't want you to find out. You were always meant to remain in the dark." Lena spun around, her pulse racing as her eyes met the shadowy figure in the doorway. Her mother. Lena felt her breath catch in her throat as she stared at the figure in the doorway. The woman standing there, her back half hidden in the dim light, was undeniably familiar, though her appearance was older and colder than Lena remembered. It was her mother, Lena Weston. Lena, Eleanor's voice was soft, almost to calm, but there was a chilling undertone beneath it. "I never wanted you to find out. I told your sister the same thing, but she was always too curious for her own good." Lena's heart was pounding in her chest, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. The key, the asylum, Eliza's disappearance. It was all falling into place, but she couldn't believe what her mother was saying. You knew." Lena's voice trembled with disbelief. "You knew what happened to Eliza." Eleanor didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped into the room, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight. The shadows shifted as she moved, making Lena's skin crawl. The woman who once comforted her as a child now seemed like a stranger, someone who had hidden behind a mask of love for too long. I had no choice, Lena, Eleanor said slowly, almost apologetically. You don't understand the forces at play. Our family, we were always part of something larger. Eliza's fate was sealed the day she was born, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Lena shook her head violently. No, this isn't true. You didn't. I didn't want it either. But you have to understand, Eleanor interrupted, her voice growing colder, more insistent. Eliza was always too much of a threat. She dug too deep, and in the end, she became a liability. She knew too much about the experiments, the testing that went on here. She gestured to the decaying asylum around them. It was our family's legacy. Lena recoiled, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place with terrifying clarity. Her mother's calm demeanor only made it worse, confirming the sinister reality that had been hidden from her for so long. Experiments, Lena repeated, her voice a whisper. What kind of experiments? Eleanor's face hardened as she stepped closer. The kind that was meant to push the boundaries of human endurance. The kind that was conducted in places like this, isolated, forgotten. Your father and I were both part of it. We had no choice but to go along with it. But Eliza, she refused. She tried to stop it, and in the end, she became part of the project. They took her. Lena's hands began to shake, and her mind swirled. It was like everything she had known about her family, her life, had been a lie. She had grown up believing her sister's disappearance was a mystery, a tragedy. But the truth was something much darker, something beyond her comprehension. Where is she now? Lena demanded, her voice growing louder, desperation rising in her chest. What did you do to her? Eleanor didn't flinch at the accusation. She simply sighed, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of regret and cold calculation. You can't bring her back, Lena. She's gone. They did things to her that changed her, took her mind, her body, everything. Lena backed away, her eyes wild. But you let them do this to her. You helped them. You didn't try to stop it. I tried, Lena, Eleanor said harshly. But the people in charge of these experiments, they didn't care. They would have killed me if I had tried to stop them. We were pawns in their game. We all were. She paused and looked at the files on the table. Eliza was the only one who ever saw through the lies. She uncovered the truth about our family's involvement in the project, and that's what led her here, to this place. Lena could hardly breathe as her mother spoke. Each word felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Her head was spinning, and for a moment, she was paralyzed by the horror of it all. Her mother wasn't just a victim. She was a willing participant in something that had destroyed their family. How could you do this? Lena whispered, her voice cracking with the pain of betrayal. How could you let them? I didn't have a choice. Eleanor shouted, her voice suddenly sharp, her calm facade cracking. You think I wanted this? To watch my children suffer? To watch everything unravel? But you don't understand the consequences of defying them. You don't know what they'll do to you if you get in their way. Lena stepped back, her eyes narrowing. What are you saying? Are you threatening me? Eleanor's gaze grew cold, and her lips curled into a bitter smile. You've already found the truth, and they'll come for you, too. They won't stop until they make sure you can't expose them. You're just like Eliza, curious, relentless, and you will be just as expendable. The room seemed to close in on Lena as she absorbed her mother's words. Her stomach twisted with a sickening mixture of rage and fear. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let them get away with this. I have to find Eliza. I have to know the truth." Her mother's expression softened just slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "You can't, Lena. Eliza's gone, and if you keep digging, you'll be lost too. You're already in too deep." She turned, her gaze flicking toward the door. "But there is a way out for you. Stop now. Walk away, and forget all of this. Go back to your life. You have the chance to be free." Lena shook her head. "I can't do that. Not after everything I've learnt. I won't let you or anyone else destroy what's left of my family's legacy. I'll find Eliza, and I'll make sure the world knows the truth." Her mother's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dark passing through them. "Very well, then, you've made your choice." Before Lena could respond, the lights above flickered and dimmed. The building around her seemed to shift, groaning under the weight of its secrets. She felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. A cold voice echoed through the darkened halls, and Lena's heart stopped. "You shouldn't have come here, Lena." Lena's pulse quickened as the voice resonated through the room, and a cold sweat broke out across her forehead. The door slammed shut behind her, and in an instant she was trapped. Panic set in, and Lena's legs shook as she spun around, desperately searching for a way out. The voice came again, louder now, a menacing presence that seemed to come from all directions. "You've uncovered too much. You've followed Eliza's trail too far. Now it's time to finish what she started." Lena's breath caught in her throat as a dark figure appeared in the doorway, the silhouette of a man, tall and imposing, his face hidden in shadows. He stepped forward, his eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity. Lena backed away, clutching the journal and the key in her hands. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking but defiant. The figure stepped closer, his voice like gravel. "I am the one who ensures that no one learns the truth. You've made a dangerous mistake, Lena." And then, before she could react, he lunged at her. And then Lena also became a mystery. No one could know the truth.